Okay, it is 6:35. I'm going to call the meeting of the Lawndale City Council to order. I'm going to ask the city clerk to give us the roll call.
Mayor Pro Tem Suarez.
Here.
Councilmember Kearney.
Here.
Councilmember Reed.
Here.
Councilmember Osborne. Mayor Poland Miles.
Here.
Please let the records reflect that Councilmember Osborne is absent.
Thank you, Madam City Clerk. The next item on our agenda is our ceremonial portion. The flag salute will be conducted by Councilman Daniel Reed. I'm going to ask Pastor Robert Bob Dabrowski from the Way of God Church to lead us in a word of inspiration.
All right, please rise and join me. Right hand over your heart. Ready to begin? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please remain standing.
Let us pray. Yesterday was President's Day, which is a good reminder for us to pray for our leaders, that they use the God-given wisdom over leading his people. We pray for our leaders, that they live above reproach and manifest godly behavior that we can follow. We also pray for the people of our community, that they make it their ambition to lead a quiet life, behave properly, and not have any need. We pray that this meeting this evening will build up and encourage not only those in attendance, but to all who would benefit from the decisions that they make this evening. And all God's people said, amen.
Amen. Thank you, Pastor. Okay, let's have our public safety report. Let's hear from Captain Allen.
Good evening. Mr. Mayor and members of the City Council. I'm here tonight to present the public safety report for February 3rd through February 17th. On February 4th at 11 p.m., Deputy Chappelle observed a male riding a bike in and out of parking lots located near Artesia Boulevard and Inglewood Avenue. The bicyclist appeared to be looking into parked vehicles while looking around as if he was being watched. Due to the high rate of theft and property crimes, coupled with the facts that bicyclist wasn't patronizing any nearby businesses, Deputy Chappelle detained the bicyclist pending a burglary investigation. The bicyclist stated he wanted to buy a drink at a liquor store. Deputy Chappelle then conducted a pat-down search for possible weapons. He recovered a large pocket knife. Incident to the arrest, he then recovered a pair of bolt cutters. The suspect stated he needed the bolt cutters for a construction job in the morning. He could not remember where the job was, nor did he have any money to buy anything. Due to the above, the suspect was arrested and transported to South Los Angeles Station and booked for possession of a dirk or dagger and possession of burglary tools. On February 6th at 11 p.m., Deputy Mitchell responded to the 15,200 block of Osage Avenue regarding a prowler call. The call stated the informant's ex-boyfriend was attempting to break into her apartment, and he was violent and combative with police. While speaking to Deputy Mitchell, she saw that the suspect was just north of her location. Assisting deputies detained the suspect pending a burglary investigation. The suspect refused numerous times to place his hands behind his back and extinguish his cigarette. A struggle ensued with deputies attempting to control the suspect on the ground. The suspect kept yelling, "Get the F word off of me," and continued the struggle with the deputies. An application of OC spray had no effect. The suspect kept fighting with deputy personnel. Deputies were finally able to handcuff the suspect. The suspect also admitted to smoking PCP. Due to the above, the suspect was placed under arrest, transported to South Los Angeles Station, and booked for violently resisting an executive order, burglary, possession of controlled substance, PCP, and under the influence of controlled substance, PCP. On February 13th, after midnight, Deputy Domino conducted a traffic stop at Rosecrans and Prairie Avenues regarding a traffic violation. The passenger stated he was on active parole for possession of a firearm. He was detained pending a probation compliance investigation. While searching a backpack, Deputy Domino recovered a handgun. The driver stated it was his, and the passenger, who was on probation, didn't have any knowledge of it in the vehicle. Due to the above, the suspect was placed under arrest, transported to South Los Angeles Station, and booked for possession of loaded firearm not registered to self and possession of a firearm by a convicted felon. Last, I'd like to discuss our 2019 crime stats for the city of Lawndale. Overall, crime for the city was overall down. Violent crime, aggravated assaults, etc. were down. The areas that we're having a problem with, that were up, were burglaries and larceny theft, and most of those are from vehicles and things of that nature. One of the problems that we're seeing, I like to remind everybody, is that please don't be leaving valuables inside your car where people can see them, because that's been our biggest issue within the city, is people seeing valuables, money, change, purses, etc., sitting on seats, people leaving them in their car at night, etc. Somebody comes by, looks in, breaks your window, and steals your item. So to make it simple, just remember, lock your car, take your keys, and hide your belongings, and we will definitely see a decrease in regards to the theft crimes in the city of Lawndale. This concludes my report, and I'd be happy to entertain any questions.
Very good. Thank you, Captain. Are there any questions of the captain's report?
No, I have no questions still, team. Thank you. Good work.
Captain, thank you for that report. Okay, any items from the clerk's department?
Yes, Mayor and Honorable City Council. Tonight I have one item that I'd like to remind residents about, and that is on March 3rd. We are holding our presidential primary election here in LA County, and this is the new voting system that LA has put into place. The soonest that you can cast your ballot is 11 days prior to March 3rd, and that is on February 22nd at Alondra Community Regional Park Gymnasium. We have many area places to vote. Most of them are only going to be open 4 days prior to the election. All of them will be open from 8 to 5, and if you're needing assistance on finding any of these locations, you can either visit lavote.net or call our city clerk's office. On the day of the election, our polling places will be open from 7 till 8 p.m. that day. And for those of you that are voting by mail and you need to drop off your ballot, the City Hall has a secure vote by mail drop box for your convenience. And if you have any questions at all about this new way of voting that LA is going to, please feel free to call our city clerk's office and they'll assist you. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam City Clerk. Next item on our agenda is our oral communications. This is when you have the opportunity to speak to the Lawndale City Council on items that are not on the agenda. If you'd like to speak to this body on items that are not on the agenda, we ask that you line up by the flag. When it becomes your turn, if you would come to the podium, if you would start with your name first, we would appreciate that. At about 2 minutes, the amber light will come on to give you the signal to start wrapping things up. You don't have to wait for your name to be called. Simply, if you're the next person, you can come right after the person before you has wrapped up. Yes, sir.
Gary Adams, longtime Lawndale resident. I have my primary mission tonight is to bring to the council's attention the poor neighbor of RJ's Building Materials that fronts on Manhattan Beach Boulevard. They expanded their business some time back, illegally I might add, currently, and for ongoing code violations, which the city has worked on, but has been unsuccessful to date to get corrected. It's like they take one step forward at correcting one thing, and then they immediately take 2 steps backwards. For instance, they had illegally stored materials, illegally parked cars on a residential lot adjacent to the commercial lots. They corrected that, and then they started storing building materials on the same lot, which is another code violation. This goes on and on and on. They have illegal parking of vehicles on Manziel, and when their suppliers and RJ's trucks come through there, they are constantly violating city code on the weight limitations on a residential street, which is tearing up the street. They are not a good neighbor in that they constantly spill materials in their driveway onto Manziel, on the sidewalk, on the street. They also push materials up against their block wall, which falls over on the sidewalk, creating a trip and fall hazard. Now, this whole thing originated many decades ago when Deford was the previous owner and sold it to RJ's. He knocked down the structures on the R2 lots facing Gravilla and Manziel, paved it solid through from one street to the other, which then gave them illegal access to the commercial lots from the back, which was not part of the original city overlay. I'd be happy to supply additional information and pictures if you'd like to see them of trucks illegally parked and traveling on Mansell, illegally parked under the 405 overpass. I just spoke with Sergeant Nitz, and he's going to have somebody out tomorrow morning, hopefully, to issue citations for these heavy trucks operating on residential streets illegally. Any questions?
Thank you, sir. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, good evening. My name is Karen Milam, and I live on 15015 Avis Avenue off of Prairie. Now, our problem on that street is the homeless that we have been dealing with that are, they have open container of alcohol that they're out there with, and I have videos of it. They're doing these things while the kids are coming home from school, while the kids are going back to school. The street I live on is a passageway from the elementary school, the middle school, and the high school this way. We have people that are sitting there, and at one point I called the police because one gentleman pulled out his penis and peed on the ground. And when I called the police and the police came, the spot was still on the ground. And he said, did I have pictures of that? No, I didn't have pictures of that, but I witnessed that. And I told him that I was willing to testify against it if he wanted to go to court, but he still said it, well, he didn't arrest the guy. So anyway, they told the guy at one point that he was banned for life from Lawndale. But he's back, and he's been back, and I have videos of him today, while I'm videotaping him, he takes out his bottle of vodka and sits there in front of me. And our house have pictures of the kids and the crossing guard. And he has it sitting there where the high schoolers, because he's laying down on the ground, the high schoolers can just come by, pick up the vodka and keep going with it, because he's not going to stop them. He's not going to stop them. They've got now 2 beds sitting over there, blocking, so the kids can't even go by. There's one neighbor here that's here right now and has elementary school kids and said that they're scared to walk past that. And I don't blame them. One time when I walked out, this one gentleman, he's chasing some of the kids. I have called so many times to the police station. I have walked over to the police station to say that this is not right. These are not just people who are homeless, you understand? These are people who are violating. When you pull out your penis, this is a crime. When you have an open bottle of alcohol, this is a crime. Blocking the walkway, I have gotten a ticket for my car being over the driveway. They have beds sitting there. So I think that there should be brought attention to this, and I would like, and the neighbors would.
Thank you, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Good evening. My name is Jessica Romero, and I'm the librarian at the Lawndale Library. I just want to highlight a few programs that we're having, and just a reminder. We are going to be having a basic art technique class tomorrow from 3:30 to 4:30 for the kids. Everyone's welcome, suitable for ages 6 to 12. Please arrive early to ensure a spot. We'll also be having, so Lawndale Library is going to be in LA Vote Center. So that means that beginning on February 22nd, we're going to be open as a location to come and vote up until, I believe, March 3rd. And, in honor of that, we're trying everything we can to make sure that, we had voter registration classes, and we are also doing something for, registering kids to vote so that they can vote for their favorite pet, cat versus dogs. It's, never too early to get them started. So that's going to be Tuesday, February 25th through Saturday, 29th. They're welcome to come in, register, and vote for their favorite pet. Also, as a reminder, we will be having, and I've been in contact with municipal services about this, but there's a couple spots blocked out in the parking lot, and that's for the voting pods that are going to be coming. They should be dropped off tonight. So I just wanted to give you guys a reminder, and they will be there until we close down voting as a voting center. But if you have any questions, of course, feel free to contact me, and I'll be happy to give you any more information that I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Pam London. Well, we all know there's code cases all over this city, and it sucks. Anyway, saw on the news the other night that we are again in a drought. Then I was driving down Condon on the one-way part, kind of close to you, about 3 o'clock in the afternoon on Sunday, and there's the sprinklers on full blast in the hot sunshine. I think we've all learned that we don't do our sprinklers during the day, so unfortunately nobody, I don't know, is it Public Works or is it the train? Who is it Metro? Who is it that controls those sprinklers so that they can be taught a little lesson about when we do and when we don't use our sprinklers? So that's about it, I guess. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Dear Mayor Pullen Miles and members of the council, my name is Sandra Suarez. I live at 4015 West 149th Street, Lawndale. There are a couple of things I would like to address. My first concern is the homeless. It is one thing being homeless, and I do have compassion, but it is another thing when some of these people are pooping on the sidewalks, sleeping in people's yards, and placing their accumulating junk in people's yards. It is also bringing theft to our neighborhood. I spoke with 5 of my neighbors, and they don't feel safe anymore. They're pulling plants out. Another neighbor came home, and there was a homeless sleeping in their driveway. So anyway, I also want to say that the medical clinic on Avis and the House of Yai, I feel are attracting the wrong people to our neighborhoods. I feel these 2 places are in the wrong area. They are in the pathway to the elementary, middle, and high school where children have to walk every day. I understand this is happening everywhere, but my concern is this community. And my second concern is Lusinger's buildings. 8 years ago, the friends and alumni of Lusinger High School won a court case against the Centinela Valley Union High School District, saving 4 of Lusinger's historic buildings: the girls' gym, boys' gym, main building, and the library. As of right now, 2 of these buildings are being worked on. It was to our understanding in the settlement that any change or alteration to the exterior of these buildings would require approval or consent from the friends and alumni. I would like this council and community to know that myself and other members were never notified of the changes from Centinela Valley Union High School District. The new renovation has appeared to have removed all of the original design of the library's front facade. Such a drastic change does not likely meet the Secretary of the Interior standards for rehabilitation. On another note, I looked up greatschools.org, and on that website, it showed that all of Centinela's schools, Lusinger, Lawndale, and Hawthorne High, fall behind the state average in key measures of college and career readiness, as well as test scores. In 20 years, this district has passed 4 bonds, parcel tax, and has another bond on the ballot, Measure SP. The grand total this community has given to Centinela Valley Union High School District is $490 million. It went to new buildings and low test scores. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, thank everyone who spoke. Let's bring up to the dais for any remarks from the council. Let's start with Councilmember Daniel Reed.
Okay, thank you very much. So I'll pick and choose a couple of these, but thank you everyone that spoke. Michael, can you look into this issue with RJ's? The comment says there's code case there, but just want to be sure we're on top of what's going on there.
That's correct. I've talked to Mr. Adams several times. Some of my officers and I have gone out there as well. We've noticed some of the concerns, others we haven't. We haven't seen a lot of debris on the streets. But some of the issues with the parking we can certainly handle, and we can address the commercial parking that they're doing now.
Okay, thank you very much. And where did Sergeant Nitz get off to? Sergeant Nitz, are you in the hallway?
Yes.
Well, Ms. Milam, if you would talk with Sergeant Nitz on the specific location of this issue, just to make sure that everyone's on the same page, he'll help you out with that. Thank you for bringing it to our attention. And with that, I will pass it on.
Okay, Councilmember Pat Kearney.
Okay, I'll speak on a couple and then pass it on to my Mayor Pro Tem. Thank you for everybody that spoke tonight. The homeless people, maybe Kevin can speak on that in a few minutes, or you want to do it right now? About
Sure, I'd be glad to. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of the council. As one of the speakers mentioned, Mrs. Suarez, the homeless issue is a problem that's not only in the state of California, but across the country, of course. Of course, we recognize it as a problem here in Lawndale. We are working on a protocol, which we will be bringing back to the council at your March 2nd meeting, which talks about how the city will handle homeless neighbors within our city as individuals or as encampments, and how we will be working with the Sheriff's Department, the nonprofit community to address homelessness. Now, of course, it's kind of a difficult issue because on one hand, homeless neighbors have the right to be on public property, and we want to be compassionate with them, but at the same time, there is a balance that has to be struck where we also have to look after and protect the safety of our residents. So we are aware of some of the issues where some of the homeless folks are and some of the things that they are doing. I have also had a specific discussion with the captain on this issue, and where homeless folks in Lawndale are committing crimes, where those are arrestable offenses. That's something we need to work towards, and the captain has specifically stated that that's what they will do. So that's something we need to work towards. But again, we will have a full protocol, if you will, for you at the next meeting on March 2nd, as well as a presentation by PATH, who will talk about what they do and how they're trying to help this situation.
And then I don't know who the sprinkler is on the railroad tracks. Is that Metro? Metro. Okay. So maybe you can get a hold of Metro about it. Grace, I'm pointing to Grace out there. And Jessica, thank you for the library updates and the events. And with that, I'll pass it on to my colleague, Mayor Pro Tem Suarez.
Mayor Pro Tem Suarez.
Thank you. Thank you to everybody that came out tonight. Definitely a good sense of where you're all coming from. I do agree with regards to the homeless. A few residents have come to me, and it definitely is something where you want to have compassion, but at the same time, the residents enjoy the use of their property and enjoyment and privacy and all that. And to go further, I would also, I'm not sure, Kevin, I know we had spoken about this, and we might want to bring in to speak to those two facilities and kind of see where they're at and how they're regulating things.
Yes, and just to update you on that, in talking with the captain, Michael and I have also talking about a meeting with the House of Yahweh. I don't believe we have a meeting on the calendar as of yet, but that is something that we want to address with them. Of course, they are looking to extend a helping hand to the homeless community and be compassionate. But we just wanted to have a conversation with them that their good intentions, their good work is leading to unintended consequences that we're having to deal with as a city. So we wanted to try to work with them to see how they could maybe help to alleviate some of the problems that they are creating unintentionally.
And so I hope that some of you will be here next meeting so that you can kind of see what our plans are in terms of how we go about dealing with this situation. And with that, I'll pass it along.
Thank you, Madam Pro Tem. Also, on this homeless situation, I want to make sure that we bring, a perspective to regulating homeless activities, which is, a lot of it, of course, is regulated by the state and also by the judicial, the court system. So the cities, obviously, we want to be aggressive in regulating the activities of homeless so they won't have an adverse effect on our community. Unfortunately, our hands are, we're a little tied because of the constitutional rights that the courts have decided that homeless individuals have. You and I, someone made an analogy that if the speaker, if her car was parked in the public right of way, you would get a ticket, which is true. Unfortunately, that's not necessarily true for homeless. And the courts have made this determination, not the city of Lawndale or any other city, but the courts, in fact, have made this determination that in some cases, the homeless, in order to get them out of an area, you have to give them there's a whole protocol where you have to give them a proper notice, similar to an eviction, if you will. A proper notice. You have to store their belongings for a particular period of time, so it's accessible to them. It's a whole thing that was outlined by the courts. And what happens when you don't tread carefully, although you want to do aggressively, you have these civil liberties type folks that will come after cities, especially small cities such as Lawndale. And when you're talking about a suit of a couple of $1 million because we didn't handle an issue properly, that could be devastating to a small city like Lawndale. The city of LA can absorb those type of lawsuits, but particularly cities of Lawndale, that's just, you're going to feel that as a resident, if you get a $1 million suit because we didn't handle it properly. And that's why you're seeing that we're treading carefully, as a lot of other cities are. Now, we are becoming more aggressive, with it as we feel more comfortable that we have that legal, we're able to stand on it, legally, because at the end of the day, that's where it's going to end up. The sheriffs do what they can. A lot of these things that they have to actually catch a person in the act of doing whatever it is that happens, be it an infraction or a misdemeanor. Whether you're homeless or not, if you're defecating in public or urinating in public, those type of things have to be witnessed. You can't just call it in and then that person get arrested. That's just not how it works, whether you're homeless or not, which is unfortunate. Those things happen. So I encourage people that, you don't want to take a picture of someone's private parts or what have you, doing activities in the public right of way, but sometimes that's the evidence that we may need in order for an arrest to be issued. Because other than that, you could see it and witness it all day as a resident, but unless there's actual proof or the peace officer actually witnesses, it's going to be hard to give, citation or what have you. And the peace officer can come and speak to them or what have you, but they can still decide, I'm still going to do whatever I'm going to do or what have you. So we're asking for patience, with the community as we work our way through this problem, and just know that your voices are being heard. This is definitely a Lawndale problem. Some cities have been working on this problem for a while. This is really kind of new to Lawndale. This problem is kind of new to Lawndale. Yes, we've always had homeless people, in the city of Lawndale, but the way it's kind of shaping up now is new to Lawndale. As other cities start to push, especially I'm talking about the big cities of LA, that's not as friendly because they have a bigger police force and things of that nature, and they have their own, like, PATH. PATH is the organization that supposedly goes out and provides services to the homeless community. I say supposedly because I don't know how effective they are. I was one of the first mayors in the South Bay region to sign the letter of support to get dollars from the county board of supervisors to contract with PATH to provide the services. Although I was very critical, I was one of, I think, either the first or the second to actually sign, the letter of support so that PATH can come into our community to provide these services. I'm not as satisfied with PATH services, and I don't know if they know that, but they should know that because I talk pretty frank about it. Because I use the analogy that the way they monitor success. When I say they, just the homeless, how you service a homeless community in general. If someone is standing outside of your house or your business, and PATH is able to go out and get them away from your house or your business, only to be substituted by a new person, to me that's not success. But for their stats or what have you, they can show that we were successful in getting one person off of the streets, or at least off of that street. To me, it's not success because you still have a homeless person, that's just that now felt that vacancy. So that's some of the things that I want to ask PATH about is their success rate. And there's this whole fight amongst service providers that I didn't even know even existed. Because you're talking about all the dollars that's come from the county. Now it's a fight on who's going to get those service dollars. And what is the matrix to decide what is their level of success? Who knows? They never can answer those questions. How do we know when you're successful? And so these are some of the things that we as a city are going to be looking to ask PATH, as well as the county, about concerning this homeless population. And yes, I do encourage everyone to come and to view our work and plan. And it's a work in progress, but as a team and as a community, having the feedback of the residents, and I thank you for providing your feedback. I think we're going to be able to work through it. We're going to have to keep on it though. With that, sorry I was a little long-winded today, but I do also want to mention that, yes, I was surprised going back to water sprinklers. I'm driving down the street, the water sprinklers has been on for like the last week or so. And my daughter and I, we commented I didn't even know they had water sprinklers on it. So I don't know if something happened or automatically they started coming on or what have you. And we've lived there I don't know how long, and I don't recall the water sprinklers. And certainly they didn't install them. So apparently they've been there all along, and maybe automatically they started coming on or something. But we'll make sure that Metro is aware that their water sprinklers are on in the middle of the day. Let me talk about this Luzinger building remodel. I saw that for the first time. I think that was last week or 2 weeks. There was a powwow at Luzinger that I attended, and I was not aware that they were going to be doing renovations to that magnitude at Luzinger, and I was wondering what is that about? I thought they was finished with the modifications and the renovations that they was doing that they did a while ago, but apparently not. I mean, I would hope that they're following the standards. You shaking your head? No, it doesn't seem like it to me either. But not being an architect and not knowing exactly what their plans are, I would be interested in to know. I might put in a call into the just out of curiosity to the principal over there to see what's going on over there, because I don't know. But thank you for bringing that to our attention. And the last thing I wanted to mention is, okay, that's my timer.
Is that 5 minutes?
All right.
Is that 5 minutes?
All right, my time is up. I'm out of here. Okay, the next item on our agenda is the consent calendar. All right, what is the pleasure of this body concerning the consent calendar? Let me make sure I turn this off.
I just have one concern before we, okay. On the firework booths permits, I see the ones again at Christian Heritage Church, Lawndale Little League, Lawndale Rotary Club, Parks and Recreation Service Commission, what's in church. But how did we get one to the Chamber of Commerce? We don't even have a Chamber of Commerce. So maybe I'll talk to Marla tomorrow or Mike and find out what their address is. Because it used to be on Hawthorne Boulevard, but it's not there no more. But I'll talk to you tomorrow about it. So maybe going forward, we'll question Lawndale Chamber of Commerce. Okay.
Ditto.
That's a good question. Okay, so what is the pleasure of this body concerning the consent calendar?
With no additions or subtractions, I make a motion to accept the consent calendar as written.
I'll second it.
Okay, the motion's been made that we accept the consent calendar by Kearney and seconded by Reed. Is there any discussion on the motion? Is there anything you need to read? Okay, seeing none, will the council please vote on the consent calendar?
Motion approved unanimously with Councilmember Osborne absent.
Thank you, Madam. Next item on our agenda is our mid-year budget update. Let's hear from our finance director.
Okay, mid-year budget update. We are looking at the general fund as of December 31st, 2019. General fund has the majority of our revenue and expenditure, so we're looking at that, and that is at the discretion of council. When looking at our most significant revenue, sales and use tax, we're projecting that to be up a little over $100,000. I'm not recommending a budget adjustment at this time because it's a little early in the year, because that's only 3 months worth of collections for this period that went into the fiscal year. Our sales transaction tax is also up in comparison to what we budgeted, so we're expecting some increases there as well. In our other tax category, everything's pretty consistent. We cannot come up with a recommendation yet for business license because that was delayed this year due to our new system, which I just wanted to go ahead and bring up what our new system is. We have an online collection system. It has been in process for 2 weeks now. We're having a lot of people come in, ask questions. We're helping them through it. Positive, negative, but it is streamlining the process, and that is going quite well for us. As far as expenditures, we've got a few things that we're recommending that we need adjustments for, and we do have money in our current year budget available for us. We had an unanticipated repair for our boom truck at Public Works, $24,000. Our Public Works Director, we would like to put some money aside to pay an executive recruit firm to do that. Our Sheriff Contract Department, we didn't budget everything for it for the final contract, so we do need to make some changes and add some additional funding for that. We got a grant for West Basin water filling that we want to recognize that and increase the revenue so that we can use that for that project. And then in first quarter, I mentioned that it looked like we needed money in the general fund for Public Works admin and engineering that had to do with the allocation percentages for salary and benefits for the personnel. So what I did with that is I went through, I met with the department, we looked at what the current percents are, and we realigned that to what is actually going on. So that's just a net zero between the funds because it's just a reallocation of funding, but there's additional amounts that are being picked up by the general fund, so we're proposing an adjustment for that. That is all that I have for the mid-year. If you have any questions, I am available to answer them.
Okay, are there any questions on the mid-year?
I just want to compliment Marla and her staff on the budget booklet. I read it cover to cover. I love numbers, and there's a few things I questioned her about, and she gave me the answers for it, but great job on the budget.
I also have a question, and it's not particularly about the budget, but it is about, because I know the sales tax has brought in a significant amount of new funds, and from what I understand, originally we were supposed to have an oversight committee. I don't know whatever happened with that, or if we, for the Measure L.
The ballot measure did talk about that there could be one.
Okay. So I don't know if that's something we can look at, because I did have one resident express, and this was, when we were transitioning with the new city manager, so that should be something that we look into.
I'll forward Kevin the ballot language so he can see what it says.
Thank you.
Okay, I also want to commend the, I'm sorry.
I have one more.
Well, I too would like to commend, things are coming clean, and it's an improvement over the past. Keep it up. Thank you very much.
And as far as the sheriff's contract, Kevin and I sit on the Library Trust and Oversight Board. They're holding off any update of the assessments till June, I believe, 6 months. Is that correct? 3 months?
Yes,
they find out?
for the liability part of it.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
So if it goes up, it'd be to the 0.5%, possibly a full percent, but we won't know till they decide on it.
And I thank you for that. I too would like to commend the finance department for this report. Councilman Pat Kearney mentioned that he likes numbers, so which I find it to be easy to read, very well organized. Obviously, the numbers are the best part. At the end of the day, the numbers in the report are the best part. But I do appreciate the fact that it's easy to follow and to understand. I think this report I probably have more highlights in this report than any reports in the past that I can remember. And they're not highlighted because they're anything bad or what have you, but they're highlighted from the standpoint significant findings, as well as just things that I wanted to be able to, that I noticed myself in terms of the numbers. So I really appreciate that. And I appreciate that the new system as well for the business licensing. I've had two business owners comment of how they appreciate the fact that they can do their renewals at any time or what have you, particularly if they forget or whatever, they can do it right away, whatever. And so I appreciate that, and I think as they get used to using the system, I think it's going to serve us well. So I want to thank you for bringing that on board as well. And that's all I have concerning the mid-year budget update. What is the pleasure of this board concerning this? Item number 10, concerning receive and file.
I believe for this one, we receive and file.
Yes, sir. Okay, so you'll make the motion. The motion been made by Reed that we receive and file the mid-year budget update, and second by Mr. Pat Kearney. Is there any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, will the council please vote?
Motion approved unanimously with Council Member Osborne absent.
Thank you, Madam. Item number 11 is McKenzie Gardens regulations. Let's have the report.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council members. Tonight we're going to discuss revisions to Council Policy 9610, regulations for McKenzie Community Garden. The first thing I'd like to say is we sent a letter to each of the gardeners about 10 days ago, and I know we have a few of them that are here tonight. I don't know if they would like to speak or not, but we wanted to invite everybody and make sure they're aware of what the changes are that we are suggesting. We have a short PowerPoint presentation to go along with this item, and it's displayed up at the top. Dan McKenzie Community Garden is a 44-plot community garden named after former City Council member Dan McKenzie. The garden was purchased by the Lawndale Housing Authority from Caltrans as a community garden in 1975. City Council Policy 9610 sets guidelines for the use of the garden for 44 plot holders who for the most part are Lawndale adult and senior residents, of which we have 37, and a small number of adult and senior non-resident gardeners, which is approximately 7. The proposed policy revisions are intended to improve the aesthetic value and overall safety of the garden. And there's 4 main areas that staff is suggesting policy revisions for that we'll describe in detail at this time. Revision number 1 that's being suggested is in the area of property and safety provisions. We always want to have a very safe garden. regarding permanent structures, and I will read the entire clause. And in your staff report, you can see that the underlying text, it's not on the PowerPoint, but the underlying text is the actual language that's being added or revised. Permanent structures on any part of the property are prohibited. The changed item right here is permanent structures inside of any plot will be subject to inspection and compliance procedures. Prior to this addition, permanent structures were handled on a case-by-case basis, which left some enforcement inconsistencies. At this time, if we do find a permanent structure inside of a garden plot, which could be fences, people like to build their own chairs and their seats, and shade structures, whatever it may be. There's dozens and dozens of different examples. If it's something that's hazardous or something that needs to go right away, we will ask for that to be removed right away. But generally that will go under an inspection and compliance procedure, which I'll review that new section as we come up. Moving on to revision number 2, it's regarding plot maintenance provisions, and this is probably the big one here. The reason why we're coming to you folks with this one right now is because we're right in the midst of the growing year is beginning in January and February. People are planting right now, and along about April or May, we'll start to see some real tall crops. So that's why we're addressing this now before the new growing year hits its hiatus, so to speak. Crops which exceed 48 inches in height will be limited to no more than 3 full or partial rows per plot and shall not interfere with the overall garden's visibility. A partial row of vegetation will be considered 1 full row. Vegetation that does not comply with the above 48 maximum inch height policy and or detracts from the property's visibility will be subject to the policy's inspection and compliance procedures. When you get vegetation, and we'll show some photos in a couple minutes here when I get to that slide, but when you get vegetation that exceeds 48 inches, and some of it can go up to 8 or 10 feet in height. And yes, we are talking mostly about corn, but that's not the only thing that we deal with. We're going to be talking about certain bean plants. We could be talking about cacti. There's loads and loads of different types of plants that go above 48 inches. Basically what happens is it restricts the visibility into the garden and outside of the garden. And as you'll see in some of the photos, some gardeners have resigned to full plots of corn or whatever it may be. So somebody that's in need of assistance inside the garden, people cannot see inside and track them. People cannot see outside. You know, if we have somebody carousing around there at night and the sheriffs need to go by and do a drive-by and shine their lights on things, they should be able to see there. See what's happening in there. So a lot of gardens in the area in the South Bay, I know other parts in the countries, they restrict it to a percentage. I've seen 25%, I've seen 33%, I've seen 50%. But that's it's very hard to track. Generally our garden plots are 20 by 20, approximately 40 square feet. So 3 full rows will essentially give somebody about 60 linear feet of vegetation that can exceed 48 inches. So that's the basis behind the change. So 3 full or partial rows. So that doesn't allow somebody to build to include 6 partial rows. It has to be 3 full or partial rows. So once again, a partial row is considered a full row. The number 3 provision is related to water use, and gardeners leaving faucets running overnight or when not physically present on the property will be subject to inspection and compliance procedures. And another important clause to this is that the final sentence, in extreme cases, gardening privileges may be taken away if we do find some abuse, like somebody maybe has a drip system in their plot and they intentionally let it run overnight so their plants can drip. People that just forget, people that had leaky hoses, whatever it may be, we are going to include that in the inspection and compliance procedures as well. Now, there's not a lot of abuse of water at the garden, we know that for a fact, but we just want to make sure that gardeners are using the water for their plots and not filling up their gallon jugs and taking it home in their barrels for rainwater, whatever it may be. So that's our suggestion number 3 for water use provisions. And next is the inspection and compliancy procedures. The previous, I'll just go to this this clause here. The new inspection and compliancy procedures suggested by staff still remains a two-step notification process. As it is right now, it's a two-step notification process. However, it's extended to 44 total days as opposed to 28, allowing potholders, most who are elderly, an additional 16 days to correct said violations. As well, an additional method of notification has been added. When there is a violation, we'll send the plot holder, we'll either have our garden supervisor speak to the person on site at the garden if she sees them. We'll also send them a letter, and then there will also be a phone call as well. But we try as many different avenues to notify the gardener that there is a violation, and they have 2 weeks to correct that. The old system was two-step process, 2 weeks, but as I mentioned before, a lot of the gardeners are elderly. If there's some work that needs to be done, sometimes they need time to recruit help. A lot of the people can't do this work themselves, so that's why we're giving them an extra 16 days to correct the violation. And once again, if it's not something that's immediately hazardous, if it's something that's immediately hazardous or something that could harm somebody or cause a problem, we'll ask that gets removed right away, or we'll have city staff in some cases come in and remove the whatever the violation may be, if it's hazardous or dangerous. So step one, upon the initial discovery of violations that are not deemed hazardous, city staff will notify the plot holder verbally, in person, or via telephone, and via email or letter describing the nature of the violations. Any violation identified by the city and reported to the plot holder must be corrected no later than 2 weeks from the date of the verbal and electronic notification provided by the city. So we will check it during that 2 week period and make sure the violation is corrected. If it's not corrected, they'll get another verbal notification and another notification in writing. And so we graduate to step 2 here. If after 2 weeks from the date of the verbal and electronic notification provided by the city, the violations remain uncorrected, said plot holder will receive a written notification identifying the violations a second time and requiring the plot holder to correct the violations identified by the city no later than 30 days beyond the date at which written notification was sent to the city a second time. So the previous system, 2 2-week periods before we have issues with the plot holder, and the result is in some cases we can withhold gardening privileges, whether it be give them a refund if the gardener is just not interested in working with us, not interested in doing that, we will give them a refund. But in most cases, even it goes to the end of the second step, we are able to resolve the issue just through simple communication with the gardener. Step 3, after 30 days, if after 30 days 30 days following the written notification, the violations remain uncorrected, the plot holder will forfeit all gardening privileges for the remainder of the growing year. So, if this does happen, if it happens in June, then they're going to be on a 6-month hiatus. They can come back the next year and reapply for a garden plot. The growing year is January 1st of any year through December 31st of any year. This is just a couple examples of what we're dealing with in the garden. When you see this, when you see these photos, you'll say, boy, that place looks like a jungle. It certainly is a mess, but the garden doesn't look like this today. This is the way it looked in October. Early October, we have a relationship with a local church that came in and provided us about 700 of hours of labor on the garden. I don't know, 150 people over about a 4 or 5 hour period in October. So the garden, if you've been by there recently, it looks fabulous. It doesn't look anything like this. It's looked better than it has since I've been here in 2007. And so these are old photos. But as you can see here, you have you have some corn at the top center of the photo that's pushing 8 to 10 feet. And as I mentioned before, we're just not strictly targeting corn. There's a number of plants that can go beyond 48 inches that affect the garden's visibility. And over towards the back right, you see some ivy attached to a fence and things like that. So this is just one example of what we're looking at. And as I mentioned before, some plot holders, a few of them have resigned to use their entire plot for foliage and vegetation exceeding 48 inches. And just one more photo, just a couple other examples. On the left is cacti. Cacti is illegal, and this is gone. It was gone during the cleanup project because it has spines. It is illegal, but I believe there may be certain cacti that don't have spines that will exceed 48 inches very, very quickly. And on the right, you have a rubber plant. The rubber tree. The rubber tree's been gone. I imagine that's been there for a couple decades at least, but that is gone as well. So if you take a trip over the garden, you'll see that it looks a lot better today. And that concludes my presentation. After this photo here, these are just examples of well-maintained gardens. Here on the left, you see nice, clean rows. This gardener, wherever it is, spends a lot of time on their plot, and the one on the right, obviously, is another well-maintained plot. The gardener spends a lot of time on their plots, and we generally suggest that a gardener spends about 8 to 12 hours a week on their garden, and some do and some don't because they don't have the time. But once again, as we talked about in the inspection and compliance procedures, we're going to work with the gardeners and make sure that they stay part of the program unless they're just completely defiant and really don't want to help us maintain the aesthetic value and the visibility and the integrity of the garden. And that concludes my presentation. The legal review was completed by the city attorney, so she has approved the attached policy as to form. There is no fiscal impact to the city, and the recommendation at this time is as follows. Staff recommends that the City Council approve Resolution CC 2002-11, revising Council Policy 9610, regulations for McKenzie Community Garden Facility, and I'm available for any questions that I can answer at this time, and I believe we may have some gardeners that may want to speak.
Okay, thanks for that report. Are there any wishing to speak on this item? Okay, is there any discussion of the council on this item?
No, I agree. The garden definitely looks much better than it did a few years ago, so things are working well. Little clarity there, so I'm good. Any other?
I did have one question. Have we looked at possibly categorizing the plots and kind of, so if they do want to grow corn, putting it where it doesn't obstruct the view on one side and then they specifically can plant in that area?
We have not looked at that, and one reason we haven't looked at that, and it has been discussed, is because we have a couple gardeners that are here, I see in the crowd as well, that have had the same plot for over a dozen years, some of them since I got here, some of them before. And what we do is that when a gardener renews, we'll put them in the same plot, and gardeners, they want to use their own, they've been cultivating that and mixing in fertilizer and all that stuff for years. They want to keep that, and the only time we really move a gardener is if they request to be moved, and we will do that if they're a long-time gardener. But we have very little turnover. I would say that on average we probably have 32 to 36 renewals every year. They just keep coming every year. So the balance of the plot, which is generally 10 or 12 new gardeners come in each year, we basically give them a plot of a gardener that is left for whatever reason. So it has been thought about, but haven't really put that into action yet.
Okay, I want to thank the staff for putting together this recommendation and the resolution. I was there about 2 months ago. I met a real nice lady, a gardener, but it did look like a jungle. Yeah, it didn't look like a garden. It looked like a jungle. And I think this new policy will help us to better manage it, and so that it will actually look like a community gardens rather than, you couldn't tell what's going on over there, but by just looking at it. And maybe if you're a gardener and you're looking from a gardener's viewpoint, you could, but as a regular non-gardener, it just looked like a mess, like a jungle over there. And so I think the staff are putting this together, and I think it'll make it look better and
Thank you, Mayor.
pleasing to the eyes. So that'll be great.
One thing I did mention before is we have one of our part-time employees that's been in charge of the garden now, so she puts in 15 to 20 hours a week on the garden in that day-to-day visibility, meeting with the gardeners, and have somebody that's on that part-time really helps out a lot. Appreciate the compliments.
And I'm sure the neighbors would thank you for the improvements as well. So with that being the case, what is the pleasure of this body concerning the new policies for McKenzie Gardens?
Well, I'll make a motion that we approve Resolution CC-2002-011, revising Council Policy 9610.
I'll second.
Okay, the motion has been made by Mr. Daniel Reed and seconded by Pro Tem Suarez. Is there any discussion on the motion? And you don't need to read the resolution, okay? With that being said, would the council please vote?
Motion approved unanimously with Councilmember Osborne absent.
Thank you, madam. Next item, item 12, amendment to the municipal code. Let's have the report.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and City Council members. This report outlines the need to amend the current ordinance number 544-87 of the Lawndale Municipal Code, section 12.08, pertaining to excavations and encroachment permit terms and conditions and exemption from CEQA. The current ordinance requirements are not sufficient to hold the permittee responsible for the restoration of the public right-of-way back to conditions acceptable to the city. Therefore, to better regulate the use of the city's public right-of-way, it is necessary to amend the existing code with standard terms and conditions required that allows the city to reasonably control the time, place, and manner in which the public right-of-ways are accessed. The amended ordinance also includes additional standard terms and conditions on all permit applications that will protect the health, safety, and general welfare of the city's residents and businesses. Staff recommends that the City Council approve the first reading to introduce ordinance number 1169-20, amending Lawndale Municipal Code section 12.08.030 by adding new terms and conditions on permit applications for excavation, obstruction, or encroachment of the public right-of-ways. This concludes the report, and I now request the City Council to open the item for public comments. The City Attorney reviewed and approved the ordinance as to form, and there is no fiscal impact to the city. Also, Mr. Kevin Mogadashi, Assistant Engineer from the Public Works Department, is available to answer any questions you may have.
Okay, thank you for the report. Are those anyone interested in commenting on this proposed ordinance? I don't see anyone wishing to make any comments on the proposed ordinance. I want to thank you for the report. Are there any questions of the report? Okay, what is the pleasure of this body concerning item 12?
Well, there's no comments or additions, subtractions, I'll go with staff recommendation to accept.
Okay, I can second it. So it's been, motion's been made by Kearney and seconded by Puller Miles that we adopt the staff recommendation to amend the Lawndale Municipal Code concerning such, and I'm going to ask the City Attorney to read the ordinance.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is ordinance number 1169-20. This is an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Lawndale, California, revising section 12.08.030 of the Lawndale Municipal Code pertaining to excavation and encroachment permit terms and conditions and an exemption from CEQA. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, without any further discussion, would the council please vote?
Motion approved unanimously with Councilmember Osborne absent.
Thank you. Next item is items from the city manager, the city manager's report.
Mr. Mayor and City Manager, if I can interrupt before
Yes,
we move on to that, I apologize. Ms. Felton pointed out to me that on item 10, the mid-year budget, the motion was to receive and file the report, but that agenda item actually had two recommendations. There was also a request that some budget adjustments be approved. So if we could have a motion on that item.
Okay, so we should, okay, let's go back and revisit
Number 10, please.
item number 10 and include those budget recommendations.
Yes, please.
I'll make the motion that we approve.
Second.
Okay, let me make sure we have a full recommendation. So we are adopting the budget recommendations, the adjustments.
Adjustment.
Yeah, and that's it. We already did the rest, right? Okay.
Yes,
So the motion is made by Mayor Pro Tem Suarez that we approve the recommended budget adjustments, and seconded by Pat Kearney. Is there any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, will the council please vote on this item.
Motion approved unanimously with Councilmember Osborne absent.
Thank you, Madam City Attorney, for bringing that to our attention. Let's hear from the city manager's report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of the council. I'd like to take an opportunity to talk about our city departments. In the short time that I've been here, I've had a chance to begin working closely with our departments. And of course, there's a lot on all of our departments' plates. And they're a hard-working group of folks that we have as employees. And they all continue to serve the Lawndale community very well. But I'd like to give some specific recognition to our finance department. We've talked a little bit about it already this evening, but as some of you may know, our finance department has been severely understaffed for quite some time now, and they've been able to keep our city's financial operations afloat, due largely in part to the leadership of our Director of Finance, Marla Pendleton. So with Marla and her staff working late hours and on weekends, they've been able to maintain the day-to-day operations of our department, and they've been able to continue, like I said, the day-to-day operations, but also perform other work, such as finishing our year-end audit at the end of last year. Of course, the CAFR, the mid-year budget, and the fireworks permits that you approved tonight. And also, as was discussed, the launching of our new software system that's automated our city's business license application and renewal process. As was mentioned, it went live a couple weeks ago, and it's helping to make the finance department very efficient. And this same system will also do the same for some other departments once it's brought online for them as well. Again, it was a huge task that Marla took on, but she got the job done. So with that, Mr. Mayor and City Council, I appreciate the time to allow me to thank Marla and her team for their hard work and dedication to the city. Unfortunately, though, there's no rest for the weary, and the next fiscal year budget is right around the corner. But hopefully we'll be able to bring on some new key staff members to help in the near future. So with that, thank you again, and thank you to Marla.
I was going to say thank you, but should I say thank you? Please. It wasn't good things about me. No, thank you. No, thank you for that. Yes, Marla's has been doing a bang-up job since she's been our finance director. And I mean, we have had great finance directors in the past, / treasurers. But Marla has basically raised the bar. I mean, she came, and within a matter of weeks, we were saving. We were saving money in a matter of weeks because she was able to move funds that had just sat dormant in accounts that was not yielding, any, return, kind of passively, if you will. But instead of having the money sitting passively, she was able to transfer them into accounts that yield a greater return. And these are accounts that you actually have to manage as opposed to just parking them there and set it and forget it kind of a thing. And so we really appreciate all of her hard work and the fact that the department is down a couple of personnel, and particularly a finance manager. Because in addition to being finance director, also finance manager, and we're looking to recruit for that position as well. But yeah, I do want to thank you for noticing the finance department, and not only that, but the recommendations that has come forth out of the finance department. That because sometimes if it's not recommended, we're not. At least I'm not a financial expert, by any means. So a lot of times what we look at the bottom line, and we see if we're running, we're not running the deficit. We're in the black. The budget is balanced, and that sounds good, and that is good. But unless you are a CPA, and this is what you do every day, you may not necessarily know that. You could be doing better. Like accounts or what have you. And so for Marla to make those type of recommendations that I feel that sometimes in the past we may have not gotten that type of recommendation out of the Treasurer Department. And so for that, I'm appreciative of. So thank you for that. Speaking of that, before I go on, instead of me putting it in my comments, we never did spotlight the fact that, every council meeting I wanted to bring this up, that last year, towards the end of the year, the state auditors, I believe it was the state auditor, they did their report on all the cities, in the state of California, and they basically give a grading or score, if you will, ranking, if you will, of all the cities, how they're doing financially in terms of their ability to meet their obligations, whether it's pension obligations, their unfunded liabilities and mandates, and things of that nature. And Lawndale came out very, very well out of the 400 or so cities. And I don't know if Marley, if you prepared to say something about it, because we never did bring that up. I think that's something that we should spotlight. Okay, without you bringing it up. So what happened? So the auditors ranked the cities, and there's one of our neighboring cities that ranked #1. By the way, you want to be far down the list, right? So I believe it was 300 or something to that effect. I mean, very low down the list. Basically, what that means is they look at categories such as your ability to pay your pension liabilities, your retirement, liabilities, your health care, and all these types of things. There's like 10 different components, and you get a score for each one. And then you get a general score, and by that way, they can tell how healthy the city is, not just on a year-by-year basis. In Lawndale, we fared very well compared to the rest of the cities in the state of California. We do have a neighboring city that scored #1. You don't want to be, I'm not going to say who. You don't want to score #1, right? You don't want to be near #1. And yes, the more, obligations you have, like if you have a police department or a fire department, those obligations are greater than cities that don't have police or fire. But there's other cities that don't have police or fires that the city of Lawndale is in a better financial condition as well. And that's not just our reporting, it's the state auditor's report. So I want to thank and a lot of that has to do with the Treasury Department, the Finance Department, giving recommendations to the City Council. So I just wanted to bring it out so I can cross that off my list to say during comment period. You want to add something?
Nope.
Okay.
And Mr. Mayor, if I might just add one more thing, and I just wanted to emphasize that, again, all of our departments are working extremely hard, and I have started to push a little bit on some of the departments, and they are doing some really good things that I think the community will benefit from. But again, because of the short staff, the stresses that are on the finance department, having to work, having to go above and beyond, I just wanted to spotlight that department. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, let's move our agenda to the items from the city council members. Let's hear from Councilmember Daniel Reed.
Very good, very good. No, I don't have any reports of meetings. I just want to say I hope everyone had a happy President's Day, and this is a leap year. The 29th is going to be a fun day.
Oh, yeah, that's true. Councilmember.
I just want to mention, aforementioned, City Manager Kevin and I attended the Library Trust and Oversight Committee last Wednesday, and I want you all to know I was born on the 29th of February. I'm 7 years old.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
Yeah. Okay. With that, I'll pass it off.
For real?
No.
Okay. Well, somebody was born on 29th. Oh. Okay, Mayor Pro Tem.
I have nothing to report.
Okay, and I have nothing to report either. Okay, with that, let's see. The next regularly scheduled meeting of the council, City Council, will be held at 6:30 p.m. Monday, March the 2nd, in the Lawndale City Council Hall Chambers. It is now.
I'd like to request.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, thank you.
No closed
Mayor.
session, yes.
I'd like to, for the people out in the audience, Sandy, Sonny Vigil. Sonny Vigil was born on May 10th, 1923 in Santa Cruz, New Mexico. She passed away January 13th, 2020. Sonny held a secretarial top secret clearance and provided secretarial duties at the Atomic Laboratories in Los Alamitos, New Mexico. In 1955, Sonny and her husband, Fred, moved their growing family to Lawndale, California. In addition to many volunteer activities she was involved in, her and her husband, Fred, were longtime members of the Lawndale Travel Club. In memory, the Memorial Mass was celebrated on the 8th of February 2020 at St. Catherine de Boer Church in Torrance. Her ashes will be interred at a future date at the Santa Fe National Cemetery in Santa Fe, New Mexico, besides her husband, Fred. At this time, I'd like to extend our heartfelt sympathy to her family and to their loss. And a footnote, her husband, Fred, was a World War II veteran. He was a Marine Corps, and he was about the size of a munchkin, but the guy was stronger than a bull. And then on top of that, next meeting, I'd like to close in memory of Martin Trevor Henderson. So get that information.
Okay, we will close, adjourn in Sunny Vigil's honor. With that, once again, we will be back at 6:30 p.m., March the 2nd. It is now 7:50, and this meeting is adjourned.